Today we will be exploring the topic of evidence-based learning techniques focusing on negative and positive reinforcement. As explained by Andrew McLean, these two forms of operant conditioning, when applied in learning theory, can explain the mechanisms used by animals in acquiring specific behaviours. Negative reinforcement is the removal of an aversive stimulus post-behaviour to increase the likelihood of that behaviour occurring again. On the other hand, positive reinforcement is the addition of a reinforcing stimulus post-behaviour, which again is to increase the likelihood of that behaviour being repeated. For these two reinforcing operant conditioning techniques to be successful, it is important that our training provides a natural and understandable environment for the horse. We need to ensure our aids are clearly communicated in timing and consistency to elicit the correct response. This provides predictability to the horse and prevents anxiety and confusion, which could lead to conflicting behaviours or the flight response being expressed. Temple Grandin has studied that the flight response is subject to one-trial learning and spontaneous recovery.
In this video, Barbie will be demonstrating how to effectively use these evidence-based learning techniques in training scenarios with her horses Pal and Chester. Our first scenario is floating, which is commonly problematic for horse owners. Here we can see Pal is hesitant to load onto the float and is pulling back on the lead rope. In response to this, Barbie is applying negative reinforcement in a pressure and release mechanism. She maintains pressure on the lead rope until Pal takes a step forward, where she immediately releases the pressure and lets the rope slack. Seeking the release of pressure, this application of negative reinforcement will encourage Pal to approach the float. After the required repetitions, Pal is now willingly moving towards the float on signal from Barbie's pressure on the rope, making his response subtle and light. Once he has put a hoof on the float's ramp, Barbie will continue this negative reinforcement with positive reinforcement, giving Pal his favourite treat, oats. Barbie will continue this training until Pal is fully loaded on the float, where she will enhance his motivations by giving him a nice big carrot, another example of positive reinforcement.
Our next explanation of positive and negative reinforcement will consist of farrier work, as Chester is due for new shoes. As a prey animal, he has evolved to flee from things that frighten him, so the behaviour Barbie will reinforce is park. Initially he exhibits a flee response by pulling back forcefully, but the behaviour will decrease as reinforcement training proceeds. As seen previously in the floating scenario, Barbie uses pressure and release as a form of negative reinforcement. Once Chester exhibits the desired behaviour, positive reinforcement is presented again in the form of food. This is repeated throughout the whole farrier process as horses learn by repetition.
Our third demonstration involves Barbie saddling Chester using positive reinforcement. This is done via a clicker preceding the arrival of food, which is a primary reinforcer that the horse has evolved to seek out. Barbie ensures she reinforces the park behaviour for every step of the process by clicking and rewarding with treats. The processes include approaching with the saddle, putting the saddle on and taking the saddle off. As you can see, she does this on both the near and off side to ensure consistent training.
Moving on from groundwork, our last scenario involves Barbie riding Chester, who is known for refusing jumps. When Chester approaches the jump, you can see he hesitates. This is where Barbie applies negative reinforcement through kicking his flank, which is an already conditioned stimulus for go. She continues to apply this pressure in increasing increments until Chester responds to the stimulus by performing the desired behaviour of moving towards the jump. After Chester successfully completes the jump, Barbie applies positive reinforcement in the form of a scratch on the neck. It's important this reinforcer is contingent to the jump to ensure she is reinforcing the wanted response of jumping, as the behaviour that's reinforced will be repeated both inadvertently or advertently.